All right, folks, we're going to get right into this because we want to make sure that we can kind of pack in as much insights as we possibly can. Welcome to the final episode of the year of Open Chess with Raj Girn. And I couldn't be more happy to share it with a longtime colleague and a dear friend, Mohit Rajhans. Welcome to the show, sweetheart.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. It's so nice to see your face, and it was so nice to hear your voice in my ears as well. So this is an honor for me. Thank you for having me.
It's an honor for me too, sweetheart. You and me are the OGs. We kind of started a couple of decades ago, and we've known each other ever since. And we've both been on, quite the interesting journey. Today, we are going to be going over your journey and some of the kind of insights and the milestones that, you've been able to garner, because I really want to make sure that all of our audience out there that can get some kind of words of wisdom, especially in kind of the wheelhouse that you reside in. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Mohit officially because he deserves it. And I also want to give context as a preface around the conversation that we're going to have, just so that you guys can kind of really dial into the conversation that we're going to have. So here we go. The great thing about Mohit, and there are many, is that he has been in the media business since the early days of, the South Asian community kind of coming into its own in North America. This was at a time when, we were grappling with our dual identity and kind of trying to figure out who we were cohesively, because there was a version of us of who we were at home versus a version of us that we were out there in the big wide society that we call North America. And the interesting thing is that he was one of those people who, kind of started and identified the game back then. He and I and a number of others were trying to figure out who we were, who we needed to be, what did we represent, and what value was that representation to kind of the wider diaspora as well as the society at large. So folks, Mohit is a seasoned Canadian media professional who will soon be celebrating 20 years in the business in 2021. A huge congrats, sweetheart, for hitting such a fabulous milestone. You old man, you.
Yeah, that's the other problem.
No, it isn't at all. You still look like a spring chicken the day that I first met you 20 years ago. So Mohit has produced, for those of you who don't know his story, he has produced, interviewed, and hosted some of the biggest names in Hollywood and Bollywood along his career. He has also worked with most of Canada's biggest media, tech, and entertainment companies, including Cineplex Digital and Air Canada Media, just to name two. He was recently recognized by Real World Film Festival with the Trailblazer Award for his contributions to marketing and promoting diverse talent through his work and blog at mohitmovies.com, which is one of Canada's longest running movie blogs, folks. And if that's not enough, his interview series covering diverse fatherhood will premiere in March 2021. It's called Dadspotting.com. Can't wait to hear more about that. But before we do, I just want to mention something to you guys that kind of incited me to kind of, reach out to Mohit and want to talk to him further about why he decided to do this. He wrote a book called Rethinking Your Content. This is an extension of his work and teaching experiences with Humber College in Toronto. The book has reached the #1 status in Amazon's business books category and stayed in the top 10 new releases on Kindle for 8 staggering weeks, folks. Welcome once again, the very dapper Mohit Rajhans.
Oh my gosh, the dapper part you just threw in there for sure. There's no... First of all, let's go back to at least acknowledge the fact that without a familiar face like yourself in the beginning of any sort of journey, none of this becomes a part of this. I reached out to you, updating you as to where my journey has taken me recently, and all I had to do was have one conversation for you to stop and say, this is important to document, let's share it with my audience. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I don't want this just to be, this isn't really about me, it's about bringing value to the group that we're speaking to today. And I hope that, because you and I are knowledge sharers, right? We love to share knowledge with people. So as much as you've given me the kudos that you do for so many people and respect that you do too deserve, let's share with your team, like with your crew here, because I think there's some great stuff that we can share with people.
Absolutely, Mohit. So let's just dig right in. I want to kind of start with your career in the media business. So you didn't kind of come from that, background in a
No.
conventional, traditional way. Let's talk a little bit about why did you feel that that needed to be where you needed to be? Because you've spent, a good decade and a half in that space, if not two. Let's kind of
Yeah.
start there so everyone can kind
Okay.
of understand context around why you are who you are and why you do what you do today.
Very quickly, started after graduating from McMaster University. I thought to myself, what am I going to do to actually make a difference? I realized that I had this passion and wanted to be involved in the art scene, the movie scene, and I wanted to change the fact that there wasn't this reflection that we now sort of take for granted, right? We were the original diversity screamers, as I say, before it became fad in round two and 2.0. We were thinking about how is this going to change for the next generation. And while we didn't have the resources, what we did have was we had certain opportunities that we had to capitalize on. And so, I worked 5 different jobs in the media business at first. I both on the South Asian media side and the traditional media side. And what I had to do was I just had to piece together this career that could be behind the scenes and in front of the camera to fulfill a half decent salary. So
Right.
while that was happening, and I saw people like yourself really put your own money and bootstrap into stuff and make sure that you were fighting for change, I was on the other side with media companies saying it can't just be about ticking boxes and putting a 3-minute story on air and just giving one language their news for half an hour a week. It has to be more. And
Right.
I ruffled some feathers and I didn't
Mm-hmm.
get put into leadership positions accordingly. And at that point, I realized that I was only going to be able to make enough out of this if I went the quote unquote mainstream route. And I was lucky. I apologize to the people on Instagram. I look like I must be side. Anyway, I was lucky. Opportunities that I hustled for and I really tried to prove myself for. I was never the #1 entertainment reporter anybody called to review films. I was never first on a red carpet. Even when the Bollywood stuff happened, I was never like first to mind. There were always great people doing great stuff, but I worked for it. And I really decided that I was going to make sure that no, South Asian kid who was coming up in the industry could ever say again, oh, we don't see people behind the scenes. We don't see people making a difference. I really made it a part of my mission. But from that, I had to make sure that I was smart about my career.
Of
And
course.
I pivoted into digital about 5 years ago. And I realized that there was this wonderful talent emerging in digital who were directionless. And we were feeding these wonderful ecosystems with this great content, Raj. Oh my gosh, you were doing profiles at first with interviews, and we just wanted to find audiences, right? And the,
Right.
and the disconnect was the people that were making the products, they weren't making it for creators, they were making it for advertisers. And so
Right.
creators were getting lost in this world of, being so passionate, organizing, producing, building audiences organically. And then there were one algorithm slip away from it all being lost. And
Right.
all of a sudden, the companies that you relied on to help you with this stuff, even they were putting up their hands saying, what's going on? So to make
Mm-hmm.
a long story longer, I ended up pivoting from my from my teaching experience into writing because I felt like this is needed right now. We're
Mm-hmm.
13, 14 years deep into these social media platforms. People, throw out words like content strategy and they don't understand platforms. They don't understand who's making money and privacy. Let's do a reset. Let's figure out where content and culture connect, how commerce is
Mm-hmm.
made from it, and let's figure out what we're really looking to fulfill in this process.
And
And
is that what your book is about, Mohit?
yeah,
Rethinking your content, folks. You can go check it out and pick up a copy on Amazon, on Kindle. If you are a creator or if you're someone that's just trying to figure out how to get your brand out there in a cohesive, in an authentic, in a credible, in a natural way, and find your people online, right? This book is definitely one that is a must read for you. So Mohit, let's dive a little bit into why you felt this book needed to be out there and what is it about and who is it for? Because you've
yeah, sure.
identified the big gap and the gap isn't getting any smaller, right? And,
Yeah.
and I feel that this book is, you know, one of those places people can go to try and figure out how they fit into being able to participate in closing that gap.
Yeah, and I appreciate that because it is very much a playbook. This isn't something that you will read as a textbook as part of a course. If we were doing a 1 month course together, this would be a summary of that. And so I use an acronym called PLOTS, and I try to tell people to go through this rinse of understanding how their content can be done through partnerships, how it can be done through optimization, how it can be done through timing, and how it can be done through education as well. And so it gives you the opportunity to think less about, am I filling a pipeline, or am I doing something for a reason that makes sense? So partnerships, let me give you an example. There's, we did this wonderful partnership back in when I was working with Cineplex with Tim Hortons and Just for Laughs, where it wasn't about anything, but what we did was we took their symbol brand, their gags brand, which is seen around the world in hundreds of countries, and we filmed those inside of Tim Hortons restaurants just for brand partnership. Now, that's stuff that doesn't necessarily happen as a result of people on a whiteboard trying to figure out the metrics and hitting demographics. So I'm starting to encourage people to reach out, whether you're an influencer or you're somebody from a creative agency, reach out with the idea, find where the partnerships can benefit from building audiences together, and it could work out. But I will tell you one very quick thing. I have a very slimmed down version of an audiobook that I've done specifically for people who are looking for personal brand advice. And the only reason I did that was because a lot of students came to me right around COVID starting, and it became wait a minute, I've got 25,000 followers on Instagram and I've got no influence because there's no product to influence with. I'm a traveler, who takes pictures in really nice places so that people come into this destination. I have nowhere to travel. So what I ended up doing, because of the success of this book, was I'd gone and I've done a personal one about just honing in on how people can use multiple platforms to see how their personal brand can benefit as well.
And what is that called, and where can people pick it up?
Yeah, that's on audible.com, and it's How to Find Growth Beyond Your Personal Brand. They're both books are side by side. I basically tell people, if you're more of a corporate and business person, you want to read Rethinking Your Content because of the scalability and what I'm talking about and the effort that needs to be made to understand advertising platforms and, where you can make money and how newsletters can work and you can monetize them. That's more of that business. So people who've been around the block for a little bit, whereas the growth branding one is really about the people that just need a hardcore reset to stop and say, can I make money selling my services? And if so, how? I have a fitness instructor client who just went through personal, meltdown of all her entire audience. No idea how she could stand out in a crowd when it was so crowded with people doing fitness videos. And when she went back into the holisticness of why she really wanted to touch people in that industry, her content's completely shifted, and she's found success because she can be a different person as a result.
So it's interesting. You just said something that I want to pick up on, Mohit. You said my one of my clients. So talk to me here. Do you do one-on-one services? And if so, what are they and who are they for?
Yeah,
and if you don't, you should. I'm just putting it out there.
No, I'd be lying if I said I didn't. And it's definitely a mission of mine to work with as many types of people as possible. What I don't necessarily pretend to have is a magic wand. And I think you and I both have come into this where when we want to do good things with good people, unfortunately, it's not always by a formula. For instance, you've built your Confidence Academy now based on understanding where your wealth of knowledge. Nothing replaces that experience, and you've made it your own. What I'm not is I'm not a coach, right? So I think oftentimes what happens is I can bring such a practical solution to the mix in 1 or 2 sessions where people are used to sort of signing up for 9 or 10. And so I prefer consultations that are more around content solutions is what I call it, rather than—
So you're a consultant.
I'm definitely a consultant.
You're a consultant, right? So you're someone that's going to help people, kind of get through the, fog to find the tree that they're looking for. I mean,
100%. And
Absolutely.
especially about the future. You know, we're looking ahead now. We're looking ahead to how content really does play into everything from AI to smart speakers and stuff. And I'm at the forefront of that. I'm testing things right now in interactivity, in how things will work. Like if you create a story, a feature story for one of your products, you know, how does it look in 18 months from now when it has to be just digital with an audio component? What does an audio brand mean to a company? These are the things that fascinate me. And I think, Raj, like moving forward, I'm going to do a little bit less on the movie side, and I'm going to do a little bit more of this because there needs to be a voice in the side of the business as well. It's not just privacy issues and Facebook likes. It's really an entire business that has so much opportunity for people. It's amazing.
Right. So can we tap into that for those people who are uninitiated? Let's talk a little bit about how you feel technology can help benefit you put yourself out there as a brand or as a company. Like, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think we have to go back to understanding what the effort and reward is, right? So, for example, you've created a culture out of a brand, and I'm sure in so many iterations of it, it's been, you know, are we direct to consumer? Are we shopping with people? Are we giving them discounts? Are we doing partnerships, etc.? And I think that because it's so easy for people now to find niches and find audiences they can connect with, they have to look at themselves as that value. And so you might stop and say, okay, from Monday to Friday, I'm schlepping my t-shirts, I'm selling this, I'm selling this. And on weekends, I'm perfectly natural mummy blogger and sharing my content. That's what has to happen. The diversity has to come from the way you want to feed the funnel rather than what you think is expected of you to be live here and go X there and try this, because you'll spread yourself too thin and that value isn't being extracted anymore in the same way as it was when there was only one or two things, right?
Right.
So I think that you have to look at it from, I'm putting the effort in. Where are the monetization ideas? How does it build on my market? But more so, is the audience coming back 3 days later? And are they going to purchase something the second time? Will they? No. What about the third? Because after that, are we just wasting each other's time at that point? Excuse me. Like, we don't want to be in a situation where we just are feeding other people's businesses growth. You know, people, they sound surprised when we talk about how big a Google is or how big Apple's getting, etc. We're doing that. We're the
Right.
ones, right? We're feeding
Right.
the system. So in order for us to get the most out of it, we have to learn how to use the tools, right? We're building these wonderful Teslas for people. We got to know how to get the max out of them, right? So, yeah.
So if somebody was to come and pick up either of your books, can you kind of delineate down kind of the Cole's Notes version of what mindset they should come with to be able to get the most out of both of these books? Let's kind of break that down.
Excellent. Yeah, sure. So for rethinking your content, it's simply about looking back at what your digital footprint currently is, how you can clean it up and restore it, and what you want to make of it within the next 3 to 4 years, knowing that these platforms are emerging, i.e. in AI and augmented reality and stuff. And that's what I allude to in the entire book. I originally wanted to call the book Kill Your Content Strategy because I was going crazy when I was seeing these budgets being spent by these companies with no traction.
Right.
But I realized that would make me sound like a little bit of somebody who has all the answers, and I don't, because it's an evolving space. But when you move to finding growth beyond your personal brand, it's really about giving you the power to stop and say, you've done the hard work. You know, you've done so much of this to become the expert that you are. The answer could be in 5 connections on LinkedIn, but instead you've got this vision of somebody else that's doing something in this growth in your field. I'm talking fitness, real estate, and you know, people who are selling services curbside now. There's this feeling that you have to be at this optimal length for your personal brand to get somewhere. That's not the case anymore. I think you have to hone in on how to find that audience properly, and that growth branding stuff is really just simplifying it, chipping away at what is going to be that monthly that makes you stop and say it's working, rather than nobody's paying attention, nobody likes me, somebody DM me and I hate them.
Right, absolutely. So I guess it kind of comes down to, you know, why are you online, basically? And
Well, I mean, and look now, we're not physically, there's no experiential, right?
right.
So imagine what that does to, so look at that ecosystem just from that perspective. You're the advertiser and you don't have the live event. You're the influencer who doesn't have the ability to amplify to your audience. So you've automatically, there's people not making money in that equation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do we prevent ourselves from actually just relying on that being for both of us? So the brands have pivoted, you know, they're already starting to work on what the new solutions are. How are you personally, not you, but you know, the audience that we're referring to, how are you personally going to make sure that you're still have a seat at the table when this is all done? Yeah,
So let
I
me
think
ask you this.
yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, Mohit. So we know the people, at least this year, who have been making the big bucks. We know it's been Amazon. We know it's been Google. We know it's been Facebook. We have to, if we're a business, be on online platforms. And a lot of kind of brick and mortars are, you know, dying after, you know, generations of running brick and mortar and passing it down kind of the food line of their families, right? Do you have any thoughts around what could be some simple ways that they could start pivoting and finding clients online versus in their local area? Like, do you have anything that you can tell these people? Because you've seen the game out there, right?
Yeah.
It's all the small businesses that are brick and mortar that are suffering, and they're suffering because they think that this online game is so complicated and so expensive, and think of all of the things that they think it is, but it actually isn't. So any kind of tips around maybe one or two things that they could do to help them at least start to find clients in their local area online? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I definitely have thoughts on it, but I'm automatically going to go to hire an expert. Look, if you want
Right.
your oil, if you want your oil changed, you're not going to do it. And you want your tires rotated, you're not going to do it. And you've got to start looking at your digital footprint in the same way. The twofold problem you'll always run into is people feel like they've wasted a lot of time and a lot of money trying to get it right. We're past that point. Now you have to get it right. And whether you're willing to invest 5 hours of it or 50 hours of somebody else's work, you have to start with exactly what you said. What is my intent? Intent. Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that.
That's
Um,
okay.
what I was saying was that so your goal is the specific place that you have to start, right? And that if you know that you've got a 5 kilometer radius that is where your business is coming from, now you know what you're asking for. And I think that's the biggest difference is people used to call, you know, web companies and stuff and say, I feel like I need a store. I feel like I needed this. Now you should know that within the 5 kilometer radius, we do a dry cleaning business that does X, Y, and Z. We need to service this. And this is the amount of money I need to make from this in order for it to be worth the oil change that I'm giving it, the polish that I'm giving it, the paint that I'm giving it. It can't be much easier now for anybody to be able to do that. But if you start it yourself, you're not going to be able to put the same amount of effort into it as an expert would, because you will get to a line where you'll just be like, ugh, I don't know where that is. I don't know what that is. I don't know what they're expecting from me. What is that number? I had a Google Analytics something. I signed up for something once. There's just way too much to try to navigate on your own for you to be successful consistently. Now, that being said, you should definitely arm a younger generation, right? And empower them and trust in them with stuff as well, because a lot of things are being learned at the education level too, that businesses can benefit from. But my biggest takeaway from your question is ask an expert. I mean, that's what they're there for. Not many people in the digital business right now are looking for 1 hour sessions. And so, you know, it's important to have conversations that make sense for what you're looking for. And don't be afraid to ask, right? That's the other thing.
Yeah.
People only ask Google, you're only going to get Google's answers.
Absolutely.
But I will tell you
one
other very quick thing that completely surprised me recently was
Yeah.
the power of business on TikTok. Right? So you and I might look at TikTok and stop and say, okay, funny dance moves, people annoying, blah, 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 people doing stuff in my lobby. And why are they doing that? But it's actually during COVID has ended up being such an interesting field for real estate agents, for fitness instructors, for holistic people, for yoga instructors, because they found creative ways to play with an app that they don't have the same restrictions for on Facebook and Instagram. And so there's another example of a platform that's evolved in the last year, but for most people still mentally remains a 15-second short form music platform. And I think that one of the indicators that there's going to be movement in that space, in the TikTok space, is that Shopify has done an integration with them, and now the creators will be able to sell directly to their audience. And that wasn't done right away in the first years of Instagram and Facebook and stuff. So it's just super exciting to see that as we grow as a culture, other platforms grow for our storytellers. And I think now is a great time for people to, get that digital literacy up and feel a little bit more confident about the tools they can use.
Absolutely, Mohit. And, folks, if you're just joining us, I'm speaking with Mohit Rajhans. He has a book called Rethinking Your Content. And we're kind of talking about, the future of, business, building relationships, and what the whole kind of online technology world is bringing to the table to help us accomplish that. And one of the big takeaways I've gotten so far from Mohit is the fact that, if you don't know it, find someone who does. To not do it because you don't know it, and to fear the unknown is only going to be a place where your business is not going to be able to flourish in a new space. And you have to, it's a case now, folks, where you have to be in the online game. There needs to be an online digital strategy in order for you to compete, in your wheelhouse. Gone are the days when, people just kind of walk the streets and stumbled across you. Now, like, especially if you look at, 70% of the workforce, at least in North America, is millennial and under, you're looking at a very different type of customer and different ways that you need to make customer relationships. And you got to go to where they are. I think that's the other thing that you're saying here, Mohit. Do you want to kind of touch a bit on that as well? Because we are living in a world of, and it's funny because many years ago you said this to me before it was a thing. And, someone said, well, Raj has all these different titles. And I'll never forget you saying this. You said, it's because she does all those things. So, I was a multi-hyphenate before multi-hyphenate was a thing. Today, you have to be a multi-hyphenate. You have to do multiple things. You have to, at least on the very peripheral level, I feel that you at least need to have some sort of a cohesive understanding of how all the pieces fit together, even if you're not an expert in it, and even if you're not the person that's executing the piece. Talk to us a little bit about your thoughts around that.
Let's be honest, Raj. You were multi-platform before multiple platforms exist, right? And so, and I mean that sincerely, because from the magazine on, you never stopped and said, well, it can only be this one thing. And the most interesting part about that was, that was also at a time where inter-community mingling didn't happen as much either, right? So, we had the Sapnas and the U's, et cetera, but that was very much an urban, downtown, maybe slightly 905 thing. But you expanded that, and you started to show how multiple platforms will bring multiple audiences because they'll feel. And so that blueprint is really what's happening online now, and people are benefiting from, because they see like-minded people being confident enough to be entrepreneurs and be, good on Insta, on YouTube, et cetera, et cetera. That doesn't happen prior to, you at least showing reflection on traditional media as well. So kudos to you for being able to, being one of the first on some of this stuff, but definitely setting the stage. I think that the other thing that we forget to mention is just how empowering social media can be as well for people who don't feel like they've had a voice, or feel like people will buy their stuff, or won't put something on a rack in a store because, like, what if it sits there for, on consignment? The empowering nature of what it's done for a lot of, especially diverse storytellers, and how those diverse storytellers have been able to monetize it, et cetera, should be enough for us to look beyond the likes is what I say. Because looking
Mm-hmm.
beyond the likes puts us in a situation where we're being measured against something that we don't have any control over. We don't have the algorithm. We don't even have the audience sometimes. And then all of a sudden something will happen and you'll think to yourself, well, I made such an effort to make a connection with this, and I didn't make a connection with this. How does that make sense? And that just goes back to the point that I'm trying to make, is that I think there's an empowering nature of using these tools now, once we can get past this fear of the unknown, the privacy stuff, et cetera. Be diligent, don't be stupid, right?
Mm-hmm.
But don't you love the fact that, a YouTuber that you saw one day making videos is now, a t-shirt designer? Or don't you love the fact that you see somebody that's graduated from one medium to the next? That's where I think people have to start to go back to owning their own, right? Is feeling a little bit
Absolutely.
like, what was my strategy here, rather than what was expected of me on all of these platforms. Um,
Absolutely.
and one last thing I do want to
Yes.
quickly, sorry, not one very quick thing I wanted to mention was
Yeah.
Shopify, obviously, and I'm sure you've talked about it, but Shopify becomes another tool that a lot of people are talking about. And I hope that, people that we interact with use it as an e-commerce tool for what they're looking for. But again, ask an expert, because you can set up a shop and an account and anything in any way, but unless you know how to run it and what you want to achieve from it, just be careful. The sound of being an entrepreneur is a very good sound. Maintaining that is a very difficult thing.
It's interesting you say that, because, when it just kind of, piqued a thought that I wanted to kind of share, because it's a mind shift thought. And that is that, if you look at your parents' generation and, their parents' generation, they came from this kind of work infrastructure where it was based on the kind of industrial revolution, right? Where you'd have an organization and different people would fit into this jigsaw puzzle that together would create a product and or service, right? So if any one person was missing from that conveyor belt, right, that was a problem. And then the other thing is that people were trained, universities, colleges, institutions were created and set up to either make you someone that would do the execution piece, or would be someone that would be the leadership piece. Now we live in the gig economy. We live in a world where everybody is an entrepreneur, if you actually really think about it, right?
Sure.
And the reason I'm saying this, even those people who think, no, I'm an employee, I'm a corporate, that's where I come from. But how long does anyone really stay in a job compared to our parents' generation that were there for, life? Like no more than 5 to 7 years does anyone really stay in a corporate job even. So
Right.
think about the shift and
Yeah.
that has happened just in literally 1 or 2 generations. That hasn't happened for the hundreds of years prior to that. So with
Right.
that needs to come a mindset shift, that you got to stop thinking that you're a piece of jigsaw puzzle that needs to fit into somebody else's jigsaw, right? You need to empower yourself, because there's enough knowledge out there in the world. There's enough ways to find people to help you empower yourself, whether it, like, Mohit says, whether it's rethinking your content, whether it is figuring out how to go to market, whether it's figuring out how to make what you offer irresistible, and to find the people that find this offer irresistible. So think about what that means today. And what are your thoughts on that, Mohit? I mean,
Yeah.
it's
You
a
know what?
huge shift.
It is.
The
And
shift is so big that I think that, and I feel that this has a lot to do with, why you're so passionate about getting the message out there, that, it's not what you see out there, it's what's coming after that is going to
oh
be
my
the
gosh.
big change.
Yeah.
Let's go
Well,
there.
isn't it, what's hilarious is for a time period a little while back, I couldn't figure out how to go into an applicant tracking system if I wanted to find a job, because my jobs had varied in so many ways, in which I was like, well, I did this while I was doing this, and where does that fit in, and how do I put this, because of just what you're saying, right? This idea that we're doing multiple things and we're finding different ways. And the generation, the millennials now understand the value of the 3 to 5 year shift, and understanding how working with multiple people, they they now create career stacks, right? Which are just multiple points that they want to hit before they get to a certain place. Whereas we felt like it should be like this, a big, long, like, it should be 15 years in one place, get the medal, get the picture with the president, and, get the Ponderosa gift certificate. I don't know. I'm just making stuff up. But what I'm saying is you're 100% right but what I love also about what you said is that the onus is back on us, right? It's not like we're saying to anybody else. I'll give you an example. There's a wonderful energy around people who want to network with me right now, and it's great, right? But as soon as they understand the business side of it, it becomes certain hard questions they have to ask, right? Are you prepared to go down the road? Do you want to? Do you want, this isn't, this is about our time working together for growth. This isn't about our time working together for tea, right? So I think when one of the two things I wanted to mention here was, one, the onus is on you. You've got the tools, etc. And B, reach out, network, make sure you're creating that value exchange, but know that we're all in the same boat trying to do it. So that's another very important part about finding your growth, right? Is that if you want to be able to get something from somebody, you want to be able to also speak to them about what value you bring to the table. And oftentimes for me, it's education. I want to speak to the guy from the insurance company just to hear about how his business works in content marketing. I'm curious about it, right? And I'm passionate about it, so I can share that knowledge. And I think that, one thing people can learn in general from people like ourselves is keeping our ear to the ground, our code to the streets, our sort of our curiosity fueled is what's going to continue to give us opportunities like this to have conversations really about what's happening next. Right? We're not preaching to anybody about, what you should clean up and don't eat this and try this. We're telling people, now, let's move. Now, let's grow. Let's find these opportunities and work together on them.
Absolutely.
We've got an enormous amount of opportunity, especially within diverse communities, to change the entire media game through these tools. And that's going to happen as a result of us continuing to have dialogues like this.
So what do you think? I mean, what do you predict for 2021? I mean, we have to bear in mind kind of the unprecedented year that we've had. We don't need to talk about what that is because it's not a part of the discussion I want to have with you, but its reverberations are going to go well into 2021, perhaps even into 2022 and beyond. Bearing that in mind, and really where I'm going with this, Mohit, is you can't predict what you don't know. Right? You don't know what you don't know, right? So with that in mind, how do we do business? How do we engage with, consumers? Like, how do we make sure that we stay relevant so that we can, regardless of what happens out there, keep being in contact and being connected to the people that we need in order to flourish in our lives? Like, talk to me about your thoughts around that. And the reason I'm asking you is, I keep looking down at the words of your, the title of your book, Rethinking Your Content, right? It's an incredibly powerful, thought to think about. And I feel it requires a great deal of pondering, a great deal of discussion to ensure that what your value proposition is that's going to market is actually going to the right people, and that you're forging, very important relationships with people. And that's the other piece, right, Mohit, is the forging of the relationships. I mean, oftentimes when we come from a place of kind of traditional brick and mortar, and then we look at the online space and we see these people who have millions of followers and their social footprint looks like it's huge. And we feel, well, why would this person want to partner up with us? Right? Because that's what you need, right? You can't just think to yourself, there's so many pieces here. One piece is being clear about what you offer, being clear about what the value proposition is that you deliver, being able to communicate that to the right people, finding the right people to communicate that to, right? And being able to grow your footprint. So how do you accomplish all of those, right? Like, you're laughing because it seems like it's an impossible task, but it really isn't. Because I think that oftentimes people think, okay, I need loads of money to be able to pivot online and to do all of this kind of, online digital marketing. And hopefully I'll stumble across enough people that will become clients from the people that I'm actually getting my product in front of. And they miss out on some of the traditional elements, like building relationships with people online that are also selling, that they could potentially piggyback off of to be able to find, clients that way, right? I'm a huge believer, and a lot of what I've done in my career has been built on partnerships and dealing with people that have something I want and providing them with something they want that I have. And I feel that piece needs to be emphasized. Like, if you can spend a year cultivating multiple diverse relationships where there is an alignment between you and them, that alone is going to really give you a consistent kickstart and progression into the online space. What are your thoughts around that?
You wrote the book. Like, you're 100% right in your final point there. Focusing in on how your value proposition actually is reflected in what you're doing, those partnerships become natural. Mm-hmm. And you're an example of how many different types of partnerships you've brought to the South Asian community alone in diverse community. I don't want to pigeonhole it in any way, but look, we don't ever, people like yourselves, myself, we don't ever wear this hat on our heads that say, ambassador for this, you need to accomplish this. People look at you. That's not the crown we wear. What we wear is how the progress works, right? Mm-hmm. So that we don't have to start on that PowerPoint presentation at, we've been here since the 50s and 60s. So what I'm saying more so is the leadership and conversation that needs to happen is going to be the first step. How many people aren't even admitting what you're admitting yet? Mm-hmm. Not even coming to grips with the fact that their traditional forms of relationships that they've relied on in business can't necessarily be the only way that there's many people that have it. So this is definitely the first step. But the other part of it you have to remember, and I try to remind myself, is it's not as simple as throwing a website up. Mm-hmm. You need to understand how your supply chain works. You need to understand how those people are advertising their products in other places. So what I'm trying to demystify as well is that it's as simple as the $14.99 a month subscription for you to get your store online. Again, if you know that you need to accomplish a certain amount to save your business, you have no choice, but you have tools. So you don't have to go through one or two people, but you have to save your business. So to not use these tools is your fault. So let's put that part aside. I love what you said about relationships, because I think right now the big gap is, what is it right to reach out to? Who is it right to reach out to? I wrote a script recently myself, and I remember sitting on it going, am I stupid? I was so shy and thing about it. And I started to realize, how am I going to go and write this book and tell people to be bold and start to work towards things that I can't even get the guts to share something with somebody? But that's what we have to do, is get out of our own way, Raj. Mm-hmm. I think that there's, it's going to be stupid to the next generation when they look at you and they'll say, well, you had all this and you still, you still couldn't figure it out. Mm-hmm. It's there for the taking. And, I'll be the first one to say, I've got a minimal amount of audience on Instagram. I've got a minimal amount of audience on other socials, but I have been there since day one. And right. I've watched, learned, participated, consulted, worked with people. I've never been the influencer myself. I have worked with hundreds of them by this point, between various campaigns and within my television work and all of that stuff. Influencers didn't start just online. Remember that.
Right.
So I think it's.
But you're a thought leader, Mohit. That's the thing, right?
I hope so.
People get no, absolutely, because people get kind of hung up on these pop cultural idioms and words that they feel they need to fit into. And I'm such a proponent of saying, figure out the world you need to fit into. Like, what is your world? What is your ecosystem? What do you stand for? And is there an audience out there that is looking for what you can bring to the table? Right? There's so much noise out there, Mohit. This is a cliche. We all talk about it, but do we actually understand what this means, right? There is so much noise that is so not for you. that you need, in order for you to actually know what's for you, is you really got to know who you are. It really does start there. And it's a cliche, but people don't spend enough time to figure out, who am I? What are my core value systems? Why do I believe in these things? Do other people believe in this? Where are they? Is there a gap that I can fill for them so that they can have the transformation or the aha or whatever it is that they need to get to that next stage of their own personal or professional growth, whatever that may look like, depending on the intention that they're looking for. That piece, that foundational piece is something everybody misses out on because of the bells and the whistles and the fame and the numbers and the likes and all that stuff. And they haven't really created something. What they've done is they've just gotten a whole bunch of people that are there for perhaps all the reasons they shouldn't be there. Now, that may serve some people because they have some psychological need to have that. But if you're a business, if you're a brand, and you're looking to be authentic and stay in your space, then you've got to figure out what that space is. Like, what is your lane and who else is on it? And where along the journey of that lane are they? And where are you that you could potentially help them move a little faster? That's business. That's business.
Yeah, you're 100% right. You know, I'm speaking to musicians right now that are writing jingles for commercials, and that's business, right?
Of course.
Yeah. And so we're just borrowing from some of the great leaders we've seen around us. We've been able to sit on stages with people that have changed the world in what they've done. And I think the respect that we end up getting as a result is that we can bring some of that knowledge with our practical experience and say, look, you know, I've heard it firsthand from some of the most interesting people, and I've also built it myself and trying my own projects. If you're not going to learn from thought leaders like us, I do not consider myself an influencer, only because, and I'll tell you why, because when I did movies, right, I found it really odd when people would call me a film influencer, because I would then say, well, why am I critiquing the movie if I'm like promoting it, right?
Right.
So that conflict with it. And then so I was so determined always to explain to people that, no, I want to build other people who will do great things. I am not the person that's out to seek. I am more of a business to business type person. But at the same time, you know as well as I do that also has afforded us some great experiences, right?
Absolutely.
And so I never downplay how lucky I've been to be able to share both platforms and experiences with people like yourself, be recognized through your platforms, and also be able to use it still to reach out to new people and new audiences. One thing that I don't think people appreciate about you enough, Raj, is that you're always looking for growth. And that's the weirdest thing to think, considering there's so many times you could have very easily stopped and said, fuck, I mean, screw this. Sorry, I'm so sorry.
No, please don't even worry. You're talking to a British Sikh woman.
But you found your ways to pivot yourself, and I think that there are always lessons to be learned. But I look forward to us continuing conversations like this, because I think 2 or 3 years from now you're going to be just as excited about the next phase of what's happening in technology and digital, especially. And I hope that I still have some sort of voice to contribute to that.
Well, you absolutely will, because you are more than a voice, Mohit. And, you know, this is kind of like we are fans of each other, right? And the reason is, I think that we are both constantly on this journey for more knowledge, for more understanding, like, you know, being able to kind of dissect and decipher how the things that are happening around us affect who we are as individuals and as an ecosystem. Like, you know, this is important to us. And this is why I say that, you know, you're something greater than person that influences something. You're someone that is a thought leader that's able to dissect and help people get to the crux of what it is they're trying to figure out. That clarity piece is the piece that a lot of people struggle with. And and that's the difference between my perspective between an influencer and a thought leader. So, you know, take it because it's what you are.
Hey, I appreciate it. You know what? It comes from an honest place, so I definitely will. Yeah.
Absolutely. And, I know that we have just a few minutes left to go. Folks, if you're just joining us, this is Mohit Rajhans. Among other things, he has had a long media career in diverse media as well as mainstream media, both in front of the camera and behind. He has also forayed all of his insights, his knowledge, and his experience into teaching in the same arena. He's worked with a lot of the biggest companies out there in Canada regarding technology, media, etc. He has a book that's on Amazon on Kindle. I want you to go check it out. It's called Rethinking Your Content. And it's been kind of the trajectory that we've been on for the better part of this last hour. There's so much more I know that I could talk to you about, Mohit. I think that you and I need to have another conversation or three about this, because people aren't thinking about truly how important it is for them to rethink their content and what that
What I
actually
would love to
even
do?
means. Yeah.
I would love to do a working session, just pure Q&A, where what we could do is anybody interested in really understanding what some of these newer trends are and new ways to discover, maybe early next year as a kickstart to the year. Or I'm sorry, I'm not trying to get into your editorial calendar. I'm just saying that as a kickstart. I just invited myself back on. That was really clever.
No, can I tell you something?
Mean, as a workshop, it would be interesting to do.
And it's really interesting that you're going to say that, because I already have planned you into bringing you into the Open Chess Confidence Academy to speak on the piece of content, because people just don't understand, how important that piece is on a foundational level to make sure that what you're building out is in fact where you want to go.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so
that's
it's
a great
already
piece for that. Yeah.
And now everybody just heard it. Like, this is kind of the exclusive, announcement of this. But I was actually going to do this whole kind of cool thing about it, which I'm still going to do.
Spotlights,
the lights, and absolutely.
So nobody does. People don't really realize this. Nobody does the production value that Raj does. People talk about it, and people might have gone to a couple of things, but those Inoki events, those set the standard. We were never looking around going, what is this? Instead, we were mostly looking around going, what is this? I remember there were certain venues that you completely transformed. And I would think about it from a logistical standpoint, think, this doesn't even look like a place I've been in before. Wow. Oh, Raj, you're going to be able to reminisce about so many great things very soon, I'm sure. But it just, that's my respect factor in the way I reflect about the work that you've done.
Thank you, sweetheart. And you've always been there to support me. I have so much respect for the journey that you've been on, and, a lot of the kind of inroads that you've made, in the media space, in the thought leading space. I want to close off, because we have a couple of minutes to go, just to kind of, mention to everybody that you have this blog that's going to be premiering in March 2021 called Dadspotting.com. Can you give everyone a little bit of information about what it is, and who should kind of be involved in this?
Yeah, so it's not exactly a blog, but what I did was I did an interview series of diverse dads over the last year, recorded, I'm not even going to name drop right now, but I've recorded quite a few interviews. And originally that was going to be my first book, and it was going to coincide with that. And then right around when stuff started to happen, I decided that I needed to pivot from a professional standpoint. But the good news about it is the platform is built. The podcasts have been produced. The book is almost done. We're just trying to figure out if it makes more sense to be a multi-level project, or if it just be one thing right now. And what I'm looking forward to doing, though, Raj, is I'm also going to make that a trend spotting platform. So it's going to be less about trying to be something it's not. It's really going to be about what are dads listening to, what are dads wearing, what are dads buying.
I love it.
And that's how we're just going to make it less about trying to be something it's not, and more specific. And that's where the sort of dad spotting idea came from.
And I think that you've already answered your question of what it is that this should be, whether this should be the one thing, or the one hit, or whether it should be kind of multiple things. I think that it sounds to me like you're going to be creating an ecosystem that, dads can come into. Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
hope, but you know as well as I do that to overplay something could really sort of backfire. And so we knock on wood because I am living to my word. We're doing the right research, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
the multiple data points I'm bringing in on this, you'll be surprised how little shopping information there is about dads out there.
Yeah.
And so I need to change that because we don't breed diversity in the school of thought and the way we're marketed to unless we've got places like that exist where people can get advertised to. So I got to build
Absolutely.
it.
I love it. You got to build it, sweetheart. You know, I'm there, kind of your cheerleader. You let me know anywhere that you need me to, you know, help you out. But I think this sounds really exciting, and it's about time that there's something out there for dads as well, because there's like copious amounts of things out there for, you know,
Well,
moms. And you know, nowadays, you know, we're co-parenting. We need resources for the fathers out there as well. Thank you so much, Mohit. It's been such a pleasure. It just, I forgot how wonderful it is to have a conversation with, you know, an intelligent friend. Thank you so much for your
oh,
time
thank
and
you.
for all the
That's
words of wisdom and insights.
for bringing me on your platform and continuing to support me. Thank you from day one. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And thank
Okay.
you to Facebook and to Instagram for tuning in. It's just, you know, I've loved having this year with you guys, and I cannot wait, you know, for us to go into a tremendous 2021 after spending some time with our families during the holidays. So this is me over and out for 2020. I'm sending you so much love, so much, you know, so much time to be able to reflect on truly the great things about who you are as an individual, because those are the things that are worth pondering. Those are the things that are going to empower you and to emancipate you and to be able to take you and prepare you for, you know, what I truly believe can be the best year of your life. So I'll see you in 2021. My love from me to all of you. Mwah.